Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wisdom Seeker Live podcast, our weekly edition. Appreciate any of you that join us today, and ask that as you join, that you will put in the comments area where you are joining from. We always like to know where our audience is coming from, and appreciate your sharing that. And also, we really enjoy engaging with you and want you to be sure and share your thoughts, questions, comments, because that's an important part of the discussion. This is just not just a time to be talked at. It's a time for you to engage and offer your thoughts and opinions and ask questions. Part of the value is access to myself and any guests that you have. So just I always like to start the show with the reminder of how we see what wisdom is, and just keep that at the forefront. Welcome, Anna. Welcome, Maheen. Anna comes from West Virginia, and Maheen from Dubai. And welcome, Diana from Ireland. Diana's one of our regulars. Glad to have you back, Diana. So wisdom is a journey, and best when we make an effort to seek it out. And the journey starts with knowledge, and it is knowledge is not complicated. It's a matter of gathering information, facts, figures, and the like. And the problem with a lot of our cultures right now is we think that that is somehow power in itself, and we stop there. And that is part of the challenge we face, is that it is with knowledge is not where the power is. In fact, knowledge starts becoming powerful when we begin into the second step of the wisdom journey, and that is to gain understanding. Understanding, of course, comes from experience. And that understanding is greatest when we take the knowledge that we have gained and we begin to do something with it. We apply it in our lives, or we apply it in other situations, and begin to find out things work, things don't work. And then the last step in the journey to wisdom is when we transition to the wisdom component. And the wisdom part is different in that when we start becoming wise, we begin to see knowledge and understanding, and begin to apply knowledge and understanding in a bigger picture, a broader picture, and especially outside of ourselves. And we begin to see how our application of that knowledge and our understanding affects others, can help, can hurt, and so on. And for those of us that are of a spiritual bent, the way I like to express it is that we begin to see life and make choices and apply our knowledge through our Creator's eyes, God's eyes, and begin to take a different approach and look at it from outside of ourselves, so that we're not at the center. We're a factor and a part, but it's not about us anyway. So that's all part of that wisdom journey. And welcome, Ricky. Glad to have Ricky. Ricky's a regular on the show. Yeah, and you're welcome, Anna. And so with that understanding about what wisdom means on the Wisdom Seeker podcast, I want to just do a brief refresh on my guest. Sam Delgado and I have been friends for a long time. We worked in different arenas around education and exploring education for our young people. And I'll let Sam tell you a little bit about his background, but this will be actually our third episode of talking about education and making wise choices. And it's based on feedback over the last couple of days. It's still a very hot topic. So let's get Sam Welcome, Tushar. Glad to have you joining us. Tushar and I go back a ways, and good to see you. So let me bring Sam on, let him refresh a little bit about who he is and background, then we'll jump into discussing some alternative looks at education. Welcome aboard, Sam.
Good morning, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for having me on a third time. Greatly appreciate it. Very honored.
Well, glad to have you. Tell a little bit to the audience, in case others haven't had the opportunity to meet you, a little bit about your background, where you come from, and all this.
Well, as far as academia is concerned, I've been teaching now. I was teaching for 10 years. That was my most recent career of exploration, which I never quite intended. Just came out of different life situations. My wife was a teacher in K through 12. And I've been teaching. It's been here in the state of Georgia in the U.S. And I was originally, I grew up in South Florida. And initially, what I was doing was construction management. So that was my background, was mostly construction management. I got into business after the fact of once I started teaching. I went 22 years of a gap between getting a degree in construction management, a bachelor's, and then going and getting a master's in management, which was actually prompted because I was teaching at the time. So it kind of compelled me to go further at that point. So if you can imagine, 22 years gap. And so that was quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, welcome, Rosemary. Always good to hear from you from Sydney. And just appreciate everybody being here. Remember, we want to hear your thoughts, your comments as we go along. And I'll bring those up on the screen as they come up. And so we have talked about some of the challenges in education. We have, through that conversation, and we have pretty much come to the conclusion we've got some problems to overcome. And we have, enumerated those, and I think we could probably talk for hours, even days, and about the challenges that the education system currently presents. And when we refer to education system, we're talking about K-12 or primary education in other parts of the world, and as well as the post-secondary or higher education, universities, colleges, and anything in between. So kind of taking a broad spectrum look at what education is. So what we wanted to do then was to talk a bit about what are some alternatives to consider as we approach it, and that includes both alternative approaches at the K-12 level and alternatives for post-secondary, because the current system says that we're going to introduce young people to education, and we've moved that marker younger and younger each. It feels like it gets younger each year, but I believe that right now point of entry in the public education is at about 5 years old, and that is just between me and you, makes me nervous, especially for little boys, because most 5-year-old little boys aren't interested in sitting in a desk in a classroom. They want to be out exploring the world and conquering their backyards and things like that. And then, of course, the education system, if you go the other end of it, can take us into at a minimum to get a degree for most people is going to be a total of 16 years. And current situation on average, it's actually more like 18 years, because Bachelor's degree is no longer a 4-year process on average. It's closer to 6 years, and there's lots of different reasons and factors in that. So, and the whole process as it's designed currently is to start at the youngest level and begin to develop academically with the target that all our students are going to a university or a college, because in the culture of academia, that is the only real success that one can experience. And that's the messaging that goes on throughout. Good morning, Emilia. I hope I am pronouncing the name correctly. If not, you can let me know. But that is the messaging. And I even went so far, Sam, when I was at Georgia State, I had to do a speech as part of a class. And it was interesting because when I was at Georgia State, I was in my 30s. So I was the token old guy in the crowd. And so I decided to talk about education. And as part of this speech, I asked 2 questions. And for us here in Georgia, we have an added wrinkle because of a thing we have called Hope Scholarship or Hope Grant. So I asked 2 questions of these young people. Most of them are, 18, 19-year-old. And I asked, did they feel like that the message they received in school was stay in school, keep a good, at least a B average, so that the Hope Scholarship will pay for your education? And I asked for a response. All the hands went up, yes, that was the message they had received as part of the education experience to that point. And then the second question I asked them is, was the message that you were received, whether it was implicit or explicit, is that, well, just go get a degree, any degree, because if you get a degree, you're set for life. Well, same thing happened again. All the hands went up. And so I went on to share with them some other perspectives on their approach and some considerations to make. I don't know that it profoundly affected any of them because I wasn't in a position to get that kind of feedback, but just it confirmed for me, having been a teacher and also worked in the education nonprofit world, that the messaging is very clear. To be successful in life is to go through the academic process, and it culminates with a bachelor's degree or higher in order to be successful. Anything anything less than that made us a not successful, and even some ways less of a person. So I know the message is there, and that's part of what we've got to overcome. Let's see here. Let me make a quick adjustment, drop our banner, and we got a comment from Amelia. And Amelia, I'm going to apologize, but StreamYard does this from time to time. You're going to be identified as LinkedIn user, but it is you, and I don't do that to slight anybody. So just as explanation, Amelia says she used to help students as a mentor. It's my pleasure to attend your live session. Thank you for that. And so moving along, some alternative, or let me back up. Sam, do you see that messaging throughout our education system?
Oh, absolutely. And it hasn't really changed. And that's probably what we need to look at in terms of we're in a totally different state of reality right now, post-pandemic, and it, as we've discussed before, it presents a great opportunity for us to reassess what that messaging really is, and it's kind of interesting because when I did a quick search and I used DuckDuckGo for the search. I think the keywords were alternatives to post-secondary education. And one of the top articles that showed up was from way back from like 1973. And that was an indication to me that we've been talking about this for quite a while. And apparently we still haven't figured it out. So and the messaging really hasn't changed that much. And that's what really drives what we're doing. And one of the things that to me has become more evident now that we're in the situation that we're in is that there's an indication to me that we as parents, we as a society in general have lost control. And to me, I think this is a great opportunity, and it's wonderful that we have platforms such as this, which, might not seem like a lot, but it is a starting point for getting into that dialogue, getting people to reassess what it is that we're doing and where are we headed, more importantly than anything else, because we need, I think, to take the power back. We need to really start sending out the message as to what we as a society deem important, because I think that the drivers to all of these things at the end of the day are coming from third parties, which are institutional, corporate, and the like, and that's transferring to what we're communicating to our young students all the way from K-12 and beyond. So I think that the time is now, if there ever was a time, and we're probably behind the eight ball, but I think we're really waking up to the fact that as your poll, I think, indicated, you were mentioning that earlier when we spoke before the session started, that people are generally not happy. People, based on, we need alternatives. We can't keep on doing what we've been doing.
Well, and interesting, because the messaging at one point had some validity to it. And that would have been probably in the 60s, 50s, 60s, maybe 70s. I would say more the 50s, 60s, because we were looking at an industrial revolution setting. And the idea was that it offered alternatives to, a degree offered alternatives to working in manufacturing only. And so there was some, again, keyword is some validity to it then, but if it was valid at that point, has the world changed a bit since 1960? And I would have to say, yeah, pretty remarkably. And the education system still messaging the same. Rosemary has some insight. Let's look at what Rosemary shared. She says, funnel into university education in Australia is akin to the funnel concept in America. Challenge is number of students who drop out in the first year of university because they have been in kindergarten and another 12 years of school. They have no concept of what university is all about, and they don't have a good exposure to life outside of a classroom, and do not have any ideas as to what they're aiming at. They've just been told that they need to get a degree, then work. You have summed it up very nicely, Rosemary, and indeed, that has been the case. And the more I learn, the more I realize it's not just a U.S. problem. It is definitely around the world, and and we've just got to get a hold of it and rethink the whole process. Interesting, you mentioned funnel. Funnel, has become a term for sales. You get lead generation into a funnel, and at the end is to make a sale. And our education systems have become big business as well. And go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, now I kind of lost my train of thought to Rosemary's comments. The the issue of retention. That when you speak to administration in any college or university, there's always retention. We got to keep them in. We got to keep them
Mhm.
focused. The reality is that in today's world, you used to have full-time students. If we probably did a study as to how many are actually full-time students, you would find that that number has probably drastically diminished. Why? Because a lot of people just can't afford to go to school full time unless they're wealthy, right? They have wealthy parents or whatever the case may be. So most people are working and trying to study at the same time. That's the reality of what we do. So I was reading in some of the issues of that and some of the challenges that we face in modern society is that and this happened to me when I was in school, and I mean we're talking 1980s, right? When I graduated high school in 1980 and went to college. My what would have been a 2-year degree in college took me 4 years.
Yeah.
What would have
Well,
been a 4-year, bachelor's took me 5 years. So I could have been a doctor if I were full time. I could have done 8 years and become a doctor.
and
So
if you were willing to get into debt at the level of what it would cost you to own a house too, that's the other part that's truly scary.
well, the this is the thing when I was looking here, and this is an article. Let me see. This was an article from back in 2017 on the stats at that time, and they were talking about U.S. tuition rising 1,000% in the U.S. since 1978.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about that and you say, what's up with that? And you would be surprised to find out that a lot of that is actually due to institutions trying to do what you were just mentioning. It's that funnel, trying
Mm.
to sell education. And in trying to sell education, they have gone, at least here in the U.S., they have gone overboard where the brick and mortar type of investments has become almost like I don't know, like this fancy stuff that how much of it is really necessary when you think
Right.
about it. Do you need a uh, 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 do you need a wall climbing, a fancy get together place, spend millions on a building that few students are really going to take advantage of just so that you can sell that as an amenity to coming to our school. So
Right.
education has kind of taken a back seat to amenities and other forms that are really students are. I know my daughter wasn't using a lot of those amenities when she was going to school, yet we were having to pay for them in
Right.
addition to the tuition.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see sometime how much of the money spent on education is directly for education, how much of it's marketing for young people to go to university. Rosemary made a follow-on comment, thought was rather insightful. By the way, I've never been to university, never had time to get a degree. I understand that, Rosemary, a lot of people are busy about doing rather than getting degrees. And yet she has delivered lectures to psychology students. And I have to just share personally, I have not completed my bachelor's degree. People assume that. And in fact, in education arenas that I am very busy in, people assume that I am a doctor or a professor or the like. And it is not because I have the letters after my name or all that. It's because since I'm a curious learner and learn an awful lot, I can speak and just as well as anyone formally educated, and I can have those perspectives. And I did not require getting a degree to do that. And that's part of the rub about the whole situation. Welcome aboard, Karen. Glad to have you. Karen's one of our regulars as well. So let's begin to dig in a little bit into alternatives. And one alternative that I want to start with, we think of post-secondary alternatives, but the problem is our K-12 system is broken. And we've got to rethink what a K-12 education looks like. And most immediately, some alternatives there are charter schools. And for those that are not familiar with charter schools are schools within the public education system that say, hey, we want to approach this differently, and they will write their own charter, and it will be unique from whatever system they're in. And they have to get approvals and permissions to do these. But what they do is they will look at alternative ways to deliver. They'll look at alternative means to expose young people and change their experiencing around. One of the things that I see among charter schools is less emphasis on written exams all the time. One of the concepts that is used is capstone or keystone projects, and then the delivery methods. They look at alternative ways, including using technology to allow young people to explore more and satisfy their curiosity. So what do you think about charter schools, Sam?
Well, let me tell you, originally I was very skeptical about charter schools and what was behind that. But now today, I am very much a proponent for it. And because, again, I think that is one way to get back the power over education, because we throw another term we throw around is school choice, right? So how much of that do we actually have? What I keep finding that the issue that always comes into play that impacts that is the unfortunate fact that we do have communities that don't have the benefits of what we talked about at the root level, right? They don't have the benefits of parents that are truly engaged, or they don't have the economic access to certain opportunities, right? And those we can't just say, hey, ignore that altogether. But the problem is that we don't seem to find the right balance to address those issues, along with school choice, along with providing opportunities. One of the last things I read was, and this is here now in the U.S., we have, this is the problem, and it really is very frustrating for me, because we always throw away the baby with the bathwater. We go to extremes on things. So now there used to be a time where we looked at the students that excelled, right, academically, based on what those parameters were, and not necessarily just because they did great on tests. And then we would provide better opportunities for those students to expand and work on that. But now it's for decades now, I think what we've been doing is a wash down of those opportunities for those students, because we're so focused on students that need help, or we consider that need help in some way, and how we're doing that is not necessarily we're not really we think we're providing certain opportunities, and we're not. I also get very frustrated at the idea that if you throw money at it, it's going to get fixed.
You mean money doesn't fix everything?
No, this is another conversation. Is if it's free, if you throw money at it, people are going to become successful. So another myth is the other part of all these myths that we've been that we've been dealing with now for decades, and we can't seem to get wrap our brains around it, because they keep guiding the conversation. They keep like you said, it's the message that we're sending out there. And I really think it's time for us to really put our foot down and say, hey, you know what? We need a change, and this is how and I think it needs to happen at the grassroots level.
And you mentioned grassroots. Something that I find a lot of people don't understand is that in the public education arena, that much of the policy and functional decision making goes on at the grassroots level. Okay, most of the ultimate decision of how money are spent and priorities placed are held by the principals or directors, CEOs, whatever term you want to use for the person in charge of a local school entity. And what everybody thinks is that Washington controls it. They have influence because they control money, and they also think that states control it. Well, they influence it because they have money also, and they even think that the county level or regional level, whatever is appropriate situation, controls it. And again, they do to some degree because of policies and things and money, but at the end of the day, how it's all unfolds is done locally. And so one of the alternatives, and I'm glad you brought that up, Sam, especially in the K-12 system, is for parents to take the wheel back on their children's education. That means now the problem is that it may not be convenient for the parents, and it may not be easy, but parents should be, first of all, one big one is reviewing curriculum. And I think many parents, if they took the time to review the approved curriculum in the schools, would be appalled. I mean, truly, truly be appalled. But the parents have, by design, it's built in. They have a place to review curriculum, give input, and affect it. And if you're genuinely concerned about your child's education, which you should be in so many ways, you should be a regular attendee at board meetings. And now a lot of the schools have they call them local councils. And of course, the perennial group that's been around, I don't think it's PTA now. I think it's PTO. Anyway, it's the parent-teacher connection. And so the alternative is for parents to get engaged. And also, and this is in education circles almost a blasphemous comment, but businesses need to be engaged in their schools at all levels.
Oh, absolutely.
Down to the elementary level, because at the end of the day, we've got a workforce crisis brewing, and it is, in my opinion, our thinking and decision making in and around work from home policies is going to determine whether this becomes a perfect storm for the workforce. But that's another discussion for another day. Let's see here. Amelia made a comment I want to share with us. Education doesn't mean everyone should go to university. Sometimes what happens is someone having a clear vision towards his or her career might invest their time and money towards the vision, and it might be a startup. And yes, in fact, I would suggest part of an alternative approach that we need in the K-12 system is to let high school, for many of these young people, be more of an incubator. I know right now we have incubators at the post-secondary level. We need to incorporate that at the high school level because, by the way, to be functionally literate for most of the world, outside of academia especially, if we have met the standards we have set, we have accomplished that by around the 9th grade. And anything after the 9th grade in the current K-12 system here is all about preparing a young person to go to college, university. So, Sam, what do you think about the idea of an incubator in the high school level?
Well, absolutely. And this is from my own personal experience. In the U.S., at least here in Georgia, we have this thing called connections, what they call connections classes. And they are not required. But this is where those types of opportunities happen because you do career. I was involved in that in a careers class. So that opens up the opportunity for students at that point about starting your own business as an alternative right out of high school. That's a very valid alternative. Become entrepreneurial, and this is becoming more and more of the case. We're actually being compelled to do more of that, and I think now more than ever, probably. So we need to make sure that we have at the K through 12 level the foundation of business. We don't teach what do we teach insofar as business to students. So when you're talking about and just like in college, why not have those opportunities where you have guest speakers come in? We used to have the career day or whatever, and people would you have guest speakers talk about what they were doing, and I think that's a great opportunity right there. But to open the minds of the students to the many opportunities that are out there, including running your own business, but and understanding what that would require, and we've seen that happen from so many of the leading people in technology. They haven't pursued a degree at higher ed, and they just become entrepreneurs. They've been innovative. They focused on a vision and a purpose and made it come through. So that should tell you a lot right there.
Well, the fact that we expect current circumstances a young person to make a decision about a degree, which theoretically, and I really emphasize theoretically, this degree should reflect whatever career they're looking for. Yet at the time we expect them to make this decision, they have not had an opportunity to truly explore what the careers are about. And that's, again, part of the opportunity that would be best used at the high school level before they are making those choices. And one stat that continues to just blow me out of the water is that last I saw, 70% of the people with degrees aren't even working in a field attached to their degrees. And so you go, then, okay, the degree is not a means to be ready to work well. So what is it about? And the answer goes back to this whole universal education thing, and which originates years back to Benjamin Franklin's, where it's attributed, and it might have been appropriate at that point, but it's not appropriate now. Let's see here. Rosemary makes a very astute observation, and redefining success. Rosemary, you got a strong agreement from me on that. The idea of what we call success now is truly skewed, and what I have tried to get people to consider, and will continue, is that success is not what we get to at the end. That's a reward. that's a reward for the work that we've done and the failures, successes along the way. And what we need to understand is successes happen even on a daily basis. And because we're so focused on the reward, the outcome, we have so many people that are upset and anxious and hopeless right now because they feel like they're failures. And it is
Right.
because of this definition of what is success. And then Rosemary follows on with too many people buy into the concept that success is the stuff that Tony Robbins, and I believe you're referring to Tony Robbins, sells, rather than success being the right outcome for the young person. Yeah, the part of what's going on in K-12 education right now, and Sam, you alluded to this, is production. Okay, we have started trying to mass produce students through education, and as a result, the brighter students get pulled down, and theoretically, your more challenged, academically challenged students get pulled up. Doesn't happen because they get labeled and are enabled to be not meet their potential or even identified because it doesn't fit the production model. You know, we're pushing these students through, so we have to do things that are efficient. That's part of the reason we're so tied to written exams, is that's the efficient way to do production education.
Yes, and I think in using a word such as success, and as Rosemary pointed out, how do you define success?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, what we need to really understand is that our educational system should reflect our values. And that's going back to us taking power back on the education system to be reflective of our values as a society. So if this has always boggled my mind, why do we pay incredible amounts of money to sports stars, which is more than anything a skill, not necessarily knowledge? Why do we pay so much for people going to what's really driving healthcare? Is it the reality of the baby boomers, or is it that we have corporate interests in things like big pharma and so on that are driving, because we are compensating? And that's what we're looking here in the U.S. I don't know elsewhere, but at the end of the day, we're looking at what's going to make me the money, right? That's what's going to give me gainful employment. And that when you ask, students, they're looking at, okay, how much money can I make, right? And what's the least effort that I have to put into that?
Well, and what's scary is the promises that we make to young people based on those choices, and the way that those are shared and presented are based on incomplete or flawed information. And and I will tell you, this one of the ones that gets my dander up is this thing of, well, if you graduate high school, you're going to make over your lifetime millions less than the person that gets a degree, and you're going to be more likely not to keep a job. And when you dig into how that information was arrived, you see the flaws in it, and but yet it drives the messaging, it drives the priorities that we're presenting to young people. Let's see here. Amalia shared a comment that's insightful. Even if I'm not done an MBA, but she's saying she hasn't gotten an MBA, but she's running a company named Greta. Our vision is clear towards students. We're helping and mentoring students from 10th level to graduate level to how to implement ideas into reality. but thought it's limited to India only for now. But we're planning for all countries in the upcoming days. And Amalia, that's another type of alternative that we need to consider. And what's really interesting is that people would say, well, I may not have the money to invest in that yet. I don't know, Sam, if you've kept up with the cost of SAT prep. The last numbers that I saw, parents are paying as much as $8,000 or $10,000 for their young people to take an SAT prep course. And we're talking a course that, at most is a couple of months long. Wow.
Well, talk about a scam, right? I'm sorry, but I have to tell her like it is. It's a scam. It's the publishers of the textbooks and those learning materials are the ones designing the tests. Hello.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, I did want to go back to that comment. I'm sorry. What is her name? Amalia, because she mentioned mentorship. And I think that is critical. That is critical because that is one way that we as educators can help take some of that power back. Unfortunately, we used to have career counselors and things like that. I don't know at this point how that works, but my experience was way back when they weren't very helpful. And actually, sometimes they provided bad advice. So I think as educators, particularly people who this is the value that I find in people coming into education from the actual business world or from experience outside in whatever industry that might be, rather than just be a career teacher that you went out of high school and became a teacher. You learn to become a teacher, because then you can actually mentor students based on your own experiences, and without you have to be careful because you don't want to do the same thing and influence in a wrong way, but just to provide that insight as well as an educator. But at the end of the day, I think so that's very valuable right there, and it works very well, I think, when the students actually have that opportunity to do internships or actually be part in connection. So you have your educators that are acting as mentors from their own, ideally they have that experience that they can share with the students. And then you have the students actually getting involved and testing out the waters, if you will, as they are in school. And that can avoid so many missteps along the way, because if you are guided by a conception of something and it's incorrect, and then you spend all this time, all this effort, all this money to then learn that you are not where you really want to be, and this is not fulfilling, because at the end of the day, someone else mentioned, I don't know if it was Rosemary, somebody mention about it goes back to the student. It goes back to, what are you happy with? Are you doing what you're really enjoying? I mean, at the end of the day, what's the point of making a lot of money and being miserable at it? It goes hand in hand with what you really want for your life, what it's going to be fulfilling for you, what it's going to motivate you to continue learning, and as we've discussed many times before, is a non-ending process. You're going to go to your grave, and I would tell the students, we are all students of one university. And I say, well, university, yeah, the school of hard knocks, and we never graduate. That's the degree that you never get you never get. It's a terminal degree that you get. It's you're gone, you die, and you still haven't learned all that you could have learned. Impossible, right?
And some of us have more of the scars to prove, because we're a little more challenged in learning and accepting things. So yeah, I get it. And the mentoring concept is a very good alternative where businesses get plugged in and become a part of that. And yeah,
Absolutely.
they're going to share from their particular angle, but if it's open to all different angles, then, we're not pigeonholing anybody. We're just letting them get the benefit of someone else's wisdom, by the way, back to
Absolutely.
whole concept of wisdom.
And it shouldn't be those things shouldn't be afterthoughts. Okay, so we have
Right.
after school programs, things of that nature. If you have really truly engaged teachers, instructors, mentors, the mentor really what that person is going to try to do is provide that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
That bridge between the student and those other individuals who have the expertise, who have the knowledge that can further illuminate them and help guide them in what they're looking to do. So that's the power, I think, and that's why I think teachers need to be given that authority as well, given those opportunities to help connect students and not be constrained by all this restrictive things just impede those opportunities for students, I think. So that's the power of mentorship, I think.
Well, and when, part of and just a little, some couple of insights into education, because people outside of education quite often don't know this. First of all, your comment about career counselors. I believe that the people that I ever worked with as counselors, guidance counselors, as they were called, are well-intended folk. And the reason that their messaging is what it is because it's what they're fed. And especially current environment in education, counselors are no longer counseling. They have unfortunately been tapped as the test jockeys for all these standardized tests. So they don't have the opportunity to spend time with their students and explore these things. So I have to make sure we understand that our counselors, most of them, if they were given the chance, would love to be mentoring these young people. Second thing is that the way our time priorities are set, because we have graduation standards everywhere around, everybody says, well, in order to get your diploma from the primary level, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And if anyone takes a hard look at that, those standards are not driven by getting people into the workforce or prepared for the workforce primarily. They are driven by putting young people in the university. And as a result, to get diplomas, what we're doing is taking up a lot of time on additional academia that could be used, for example, for career exploration, for interning, for any of a number of different possibilities, but we are so locked into this process of pushing to the university, they're not allowed to take that. And in your comment about some of the elective courses, one of the problems and alternative we need to look at in the K-12 system is to no longer have arts and business and technical areas as electives, have them and integrated, married to the academic processes, and that becomes the normal, the standard, rather than, well, if you have enough time and you don't fail at anything, then you can take these. It should be integrated. It should be fully a part of the entire education process. And that's another alternative approach. Let's see. Amalia offers a thought here. Can you arrange a session for mentoring? I think it's a great topic of discussion. Sure. Part of the whole point of being here live is to discuss topics that are important to others, and sure, we can do a live session on mentoring. It's a worthy consideration. So we're getting close on time. We want to look at some post-secondary alternatives, and we can start by listing a few. Sam, what do you think of as some post-secondary alternatives to just a university or college?
Well, I actually tried to do a quick search, found one article, and I'm just going to give you the list of what they had in there.
Okay.
And we've covered a couple of these. So entrepreneurship was one, actually going to college, actually going into a trade, art for those who are artistically inclined and all that. Again, this is another one of those that we totally say, don't do that.
Right.
and then, but again, going back to where are we placing our values,
Right.
and the liberal arts, we've previously talked a little bit about that. What is the value of that? Just this morning, I found an article. I forwarded you a copy, and they were talking about technology. Why do we need STEAM education and not just STEM? So there are valid reasons why we should not, again, throw the baby out with bathwater. Taking online classes, just going ahead and taking on any job. That one was kind of interesting when I saw that, because I remember when I was still in high school, I said, I got to work. I was, I don't know, 15 or something. I just told my parents, I'm going to go out and find a job. I was still in school, and what? You don't need a job. I said, well, I went out. And just started going through some businesses, and I remember one was a baking. It was a bakery, and the guy said, yeah, come in tomorrow. And sure, and I lasted one day on that one, because they sent me off to the oven, and I learned what it was to be in an oven and sweating and all that stuff. So that alone let me know, hey, you really want to do this now. But so it's a learning opportunity. Just take on any job. I mean, so that's an option. Sell real estate. They had volunteering. This is another thing. Unfortunately, we don't give a lot of opportunities for folks that are actually more of the altruistic type of personalities. And I've run into this at school with eighth graders. One eighth grader, that what she wanted to do was be involved in things that help other people. So how do you do that? You volunteer, So this goes back to what it is that you want, that as your individual self. Joining the military, and Kevin, you can speak about that big time, right? Becoming an apprentice, a fellow. Apprenticeships. I remember not being in construction. This old house, right? I would always watch those programs and say, man, we're losing all these high skills in building. What did they do? They ended up putting in an apprenticeship program, because they realized the same issue was going on. We're losing all these skills. So they were bringing in high school students, and they were working alongside them when they were doing these home renovations across the country with these super expert people. I mean, carpenters. I mean, really, really old school type folks. And then attending a work college. So there are there's this workcolleges.org. I haven't checked it out, to be quite honest with you, but apparently there are about 7 of those here in the U.S. Where the issue is you pay for your own tuition by working as you're studying. So that's something to look into as well. I haven't really looked into it but I picked that up from just a quick search. So those are some things right there, just to help.
One of the things that I am like to focus on right now is the apprenticeship programs, and how we have so missed what is valuable in that. And by the way, apprenticing was higher education for a long time, many years, even in what we call called professional areas now. And it's only been in fairly recent history that we've even gone away from apprenticing for those and relied on academia. But one of my favorite messages about apprenticeships that I get to share right now as I travel around is the concept of earn while you learn. And the fact that in an apprenticeship program, you are working, so you're making money. And so the same time frame that a young person in college is going in debt up to their eyeballs, you're making, between $100,000 and $150,000 while you are learning. Which another value of that setting is not only are you getting the knowledge and requisite information as part of this apprenticeship training, but you're getting an opportunity to apply those things in a meaningful way. So you're not dependent on memorizing to learn. You are learning because you're taking your knowledge and doing something with it.
And let me tell you, Kevin, now you mentioned apprenticeships and earn while you learn. One of the other scams that we pulled off as a society, I don't know elsewhere, but here in the U.S. are these internships where we are having students come in, particularly in the medical profession, and they're spending all this time for free as an intern, not getting paid. And then, the trade-off is that you are learning. No, why should that be the case? And there's actually been a lot of discussions about that. It's becoming less and less acceptable now for industry to be doing that sort of thing. Now the expectation is that you're going to get paid for your time as well as you're doing that. Why not? So I think that's another point of discussion as well.
We're over time, but I have to make a point that the example you just gave is an example in the academic arena. It is not one that you see in other arenas. So again, we have to question some of the motivation there and consider. So need to wrap up. Wow, time goes quickly. And
great conversation, though. I mean, I think.
Oh yeah, I appreciate Rosemary comments that internships are illegal in Australia, so they've gotten a hold of it. So thanks everyone for being here. Sam, thanks for taking out your time as well to join in the conversation and bring perspective. And I am confident that Wisdom Seeker Live podcast will have additional conversation around this topic, because if there's an area that we are lacking wisdom in right now, it is in our education arena. Seems ironic, doesn't it, that education would be lacking wisdom? It seems like it would go the other way, right? So anyway, we'll be back next Monday, every Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern, and appreciate everyone joining. I really hope that everyone will bring friends back to join us each week as we have the conversation. And we may need to consider what Amalia suggested and do a session on mentoring, because that's a different concept and it is worthy of consideration. So we'll look at that and decide. God bless all of you. Have a great week and join us again next week. Take care, Sam.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, everyone.